January 11th.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Bryan Fischer.
Howdy, and welcome to this Friday edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. I am Bryan Fischer, your congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent host. As always, Rob Gardner. Jeff Reed still under the weather. We hope to see him back on Monday. Anyway, just a quick note. I've missed you guys for the last 2 days. What happened here where we live, we had a mondo windstorm came through here. I guess it was on Wednesday night. Knocked out the power to over 500,000 people, knocked out the power to the studio that I broadcast from, and our internet went down. Same windstorm, knocked Comcast out completely. So we had another 18 hours with no internet. Now we've got everything seemingly put back together, so it's good to be with you again. Just quickly, I want to remind you that you can get podcasts at afr.net. Also, audio stream the program live at afr.net. Encourage you to download a podcast app for your phone, and you can subscribe to the Focal Point podcast on your podcast app. I did it on Apple just the other day. Easy to do. Never need to miss a program. You can also live stream the program, audio and video, at our Focal Point Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. Email address, focalpoint@afa.net. You can follow me on Twitter at Bryan J. Fischer. Just a reminder, my brand new book, Urban Legends of the Constitution, subtitle, Why Everything You've Heard About the Constitution is Wrong. That's now available at Amazon. Just go to the books section, plug in Urban Legends of the Constitution. It'll pop right up for you. All right, well, let's turn our attention to the Word of God, as we typically do at the beginning of the program. Now, in our journey through the book of Judges, we have come to one of the most famous stories in the Bible. This is the story of David's shootout with Goliath. This is found in 1 Samuel 17. So we're not in our journey through Judges, we're in our journey through 1 Samuel. So excuse the improper alliteration there. And I want to focus our attention on four of the individuals and groups in this story. Now, when this saga opens, the armies of God and the armies of the Philistines are on opposite sides of this valley called the Valley of Elah, a valley that runs east to west with a stream running right through the middle of it. Whoever controlled this valley controlled access to the interior of Saul's kingdom. So every day in this standoff between these two armies, a dude by the name of Goliath, he's called the champion of the Philistines, he came out and hollered at the army of God every day and frightened them out of their gourds just by yelling at them. Now, he was a pretty imposing dude. He was 9 feet 9 inches tall. He played center for the Celtics when he wasn't out yelling at God's people. So he was an intimidating guy and intimidated the Israelites. He was so big. Listen to this. Goliath was so big and so powerful that the iron head on his spear, just the head, mind you, not the whole thing, weighed 15 pounds. And the shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, like an industrial strength loom that you would use to weave cloth. And he was waving that thing around like it was a baseball bat. He had a coat of mail, that's an outer piece of armor, that weighed 125 pounds. He was wearing that around like it was a tracksuit. He had bronze armor on his legs, bronze helmet on his head. In other words, it looked like there was just no way to get at him. Plus, he had a shield bearer going before him who was carrying a shield that was as tall as he was. It could hunker down behind that thing. You actually couldn't see him, let alone figure out where to aim. So Saul proposes a challenge, a mano challenge, to the best guy Israel had. As a winner-take-all cage match, Saul hollers out, this is what he was yelling, I defy, excuse me, that word means to taunt. I defy or taunt the ranks of Israel. Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he kills me, we will be your slaves, but if I wipe the floor with him, then you guys will be our slaves. So this spooked the armies of God, and they say, when it says, when Saul heard, and on all Israel heard these words, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. The word dismayed means to be broken or to be shattered, and Saul, you'll notice, was included. Remember, he was the one that stood head and shoulders above everybody else in Israel. That's why they wanted him to be their king. He was the guy they wanted in front of their armies. But it spooked him just like it spooked everybody else. He was as petrified as everybody else. Here's the guy supposed to fearlessly lead them into battle, and he's as petrified as everybody else, had no spine in this situation. And this went on for almost 6 weeks. Goliath came out twice a day, once in the morning, once at night, just to rank on the armies of God. You know, and this is one of the things, isn't it? One of the things that disappoints us as conservatives, when the people we choose to lead us fold like a cheap Bedouin tent in a stiff desert breeze when we need people of courage and spine and strength and bravery. Right when we need strong, unapologetic, fearless leadership, we instead have elected officials who are dismayed and greatly afraid. Sound a little familiar? Now, sometimes when you see something that needs to be done, God and his will and his word are being ignored or laughed at or taunted or rejected or not obeyed, and you know somebody needs to do something. But you look around and you don't see anybody who has the spine to step up and face right into what needs to be done. Maybe that's God's way of saying that I want you to be the one who steps up. That's the way it worked for David. So David's there in the front lines, visiting his brothers, taking food to them. He steps up and starts talking to the people, the armies of Israel, and says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Let me at him, David says. And David's dad had sent provisions with him for his sons. There were 3 of them that were in the army. And one of them, Eliab, his older brother, gets real steamed at David for showing up. He says, I know your presumption and the evil of your heart, for you have come down to watch the battle. You're just here for the display. You're just here for the fights. You want to see people fighting each other. You want to see people falling to the ground. You want to see blood. I know your evil heart, Eliab says to David. David says, why are you so worked up for? We're just talking here. One of the things you'll find when you step up and step out, people will not praise you. You think the people will praise you for your courage. They won't. They will criticize you. They will assume the absolute worst about your motives. They will accuse you of being difficult, of being stubborn, and they'll want to know why you can't just go along to get along. Now, sometimes, as in David's case, older brothers can be like that. Think their younger brother is just a twerp, just a nuisance, might even resent him and just want him to go away. Now, if you're an older brother like that, you may want to stop and reconsider. God may have plans for your twit of a younger brother that at this time you don't know anything about. And also, never forget, if you are the younger brother and you get no respect even from your own family, that cannot stop God from fulfilling his calling on your life any more than it could stop God from using David to fulfill his mission. So anyway, eventually the word filters back to Saul that David's out there saying these things. So he summons him to camp headquarters, and David says, let no man's heart fail because of Goliath. I will go and fight with this Philistine. So Saul tries to talk him out of it. You are but a youth. You're just a kid. But Saul, has been a man of war from the time that he was a youth, from the time that he was in Little League. David says, let me tell you about my days as a shepherd. When there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after that lion, I went after that bear, I struck him, and I grabbed that sheep right out of his mouth. And if he fought me for that sheep, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. So I have struck down both lions and bears, and tigers, oh my, that's actually not in there. And this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. So Saul says, go, and may the Lord be with you. You want to throw yourself in the wood chipper? Be my guest. So Saul tried to put his own armor on David, but David says, look, I can't use these. I haven't tested them. I haven't used them. I need to go with what works for me. So he took Saul's armor off, and all he had left was his sling. Now remember, people could work these slings, slinging stones at an incredible rate of speeds and with incredible accuracy. Remember, we're told about the Benjamites that they could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. So when David aimed this thing, he was going to hit what he aimed at. He took 5 smooth stones from the brook, this brook that went through the middle of the valley of Elah, and he put him in his shepherd's pouch. And so he takes his sling and he starts running at Goliath. Now when Goliath saw this little twerp coming at him, he disdained him. Literally, he despised him. He regarded him with contempt because he was but a youth. Had his shepherd's staff, was all he had, and his sling. Goliath laughed. Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And he cursed David by his gods. One of these would be Dagon, the fish god. And Goliath had already forgotten what happened the last time Dagon squared off with Yahweh, so he says to David, I'm going to turn you into bird food. David says, you come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord, Yahweh, will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, and I will turn you into bird food, David says, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves, not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. So David runs at Goliath, puts a stone that he picked up from the stream running through the valley of Elah, slung it, and struck the Philistine on his forehead. Remember, that was the only place on his entire body that was exposed. And David hit him right in the forehead. We're told that the stone sank into his forehead. So he threw this thing, slung it with such velocity that it put a rock-sized dent in Goliath's skull, and he toppled over and did a face plant right on the ground. So David didn't have a sword, but he says, hey, he's got one. So now Goliath is dead. He's dead on his face, lying on the battlefield. David says, I don't have a sword. I promised I was going to cut off his head. I don't have a sword. Hey, but Goliath's got one. So he took out the sword of Goliath. He ran over, drew it out of its sheath, and he killed him, cut his head clean off with Goliath's sword. So when the Philistines saw that Goliath was dead, they took off running, and the armies of God rose up and chased the Philistines all the way home and plundered their camp. And David grabbed the head of Goliath and took it with him as a souvenir all the way to Jerusalem. Well, join me in prayer if you'd be kind enough. Sovereign Lord, I pray for us today that you will transform each of us into a man or woman with David's character, David's faith, David's courage. When others are dismayed and greatly afraid in threatening circumstances, I pray that we will stand strong and firm as David did. Show us how to face what seem to be overwhelming obstacles in your name, the name of the Lord Almighty. Lord, we see here how David's preparation for this day was forged in private as he protected his sheep when no one was looking. He developed a quiet but intense confidence in you and was able to say, the Lord delivered me from the paw of the lion, from the paw of the bear, and will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. I pray that each of us will see those times when we seem to labor in quiet and in unseen and unnoticed ways, to see them not as wasted days, but as days of preparation. May we exercise growing faith in those settings so that we become ready for the larger challenge you intend to set before us. We pray these things in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel.
Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute.
Husband, grandfather, uncle.
This is Focal Point with Bryan Fischer on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative
That was a little different.
radio. Yeah, I forgot to get ramped up properly, so I had to kind of string it out. So anyway, just one other thought that I wanted to pass along to you. When I went to Israel, I've had one opportunity to take a tour to Israel back in the day, and had an opportunity to go to this very valley, the Valley of Elah, with the stream running through it. We surveyed the battlefield where David stared down Goliath, and then when we were done, I went down to the same stream, and I found 5 smooth stones out of the same stream that David took his 5 stones from. I brought them back for my son to give to him for his 16th birthday. Put them in a little leather pouch, each one of those stones to symbolize one of the traits of masculinity he needed to be a successful man as he completed his journey toward adulthood. I got a section in the Boy to Man book about this. It's in an appendix entitled The Ceremony of the Five Stones. You can pick up a copy of the Boy to Man book with this appendix at afastore.net. afastore.net. Now, I also wanted to mention, we had to run a generator here. It's interesting because Debbie and I bought this generator in Tupelo, in Mississippi, because we knew we had thunderstorms down there. We had tornadoes. We had windstorms. And we knew that there would be a chance that we would need a generator, even in Mississippi, because of these freak weather events. We never needed it, never had it out of the box. So we moved it up here to the Pacific Northwest, which has one of the mildest climates in the country. I mean, you know, the average highs here are in the 40s like every single day. It never varies. You get rain, but it's not thunderous rain, not like the thunderstorms that we had back in Mississippi, just kind of a steady rain, almost like a strong drizzle. And so we thought, well, we'll just take it in case, but we'll stick it in the garage. Well, man, all the power went out in our house. We had no power to the refrigerator, had no power to the freezer, no power to the refrigerator in the kitchen. So we plugged it in, had never operated it, took it out of the box. So we had to put the oil in it. We had to put the gasoline in it, and then we had to crank it. And Debbie, bless her heart, all 5 feet, 0 inches of her, she was able to crank that thing right up. So pretty good little starting mechanism. So we ran that thing. I don't know how we ran it for 18 hours or so. Kept power going to the chest-high freezer in the garage, the outside refrigerator, and the refrigerator in the kitchen. So anyway, that's our little exciting story from life in the Pacific Northwest.
I'm glad you remembered and decided to take that with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's needed here in Mississippi, but I wouldn't have ever thought it would be needed there.
Well, we thought about leaving it behind because of that. In fact, I got a picture. This picture that I took the day that we actually left. It was like a Monday night. And we were driving to Memphis to pick JD up from the airport, who was going to help us drive my car back to the Pacific Northwest. And we had a thunderstorm, and a lightning strike hit this big, tall tree, 100-foot tall tree, and it was right across the street. I mean, the thunderclap, it would shake you right to your roots. And that lightning bolt peeled the bark off of that tree from the top of the tree to the base of the tree. Just peeled it right off. So I got a picture. You look at it, it's the tree without the bark. It was amazing. So we figured, well, we're not going to have that kind of stuff where we're going, so we can leave it behind. Now we better take it just in case. And sure enough, we needed it last couple of days. This is the last day we're going to be pushing the preborn ministry with you. I want to encourage you to consider a donation here. Preborn ministry is a ministry. Preborn works with Christian pregnancy centers, existing Christian pregnancy centers, to get ultrasound devices in their pregnancy centers so that a pregnant woman can hear her baby's heartbeat and she can see the baby inside her womb. 80% of the time, when a woman sees, even an abortion-minded woman, when she sees the picture of her baby in her womb, she chooses to keep her baby. This is one of the most effective pro-life things that can be done. And preborn centers that Preborn works with, have counseled over 385,000 women who were abortion-minded. More than 150,000 babies have been saved, and more than 49,000 women have surrendered their lives to Christ in the process. Now, you can help. A gift of $28 will provide one woman seeking an abortion a free ultrasound. If you can make a gift of $140, you will provide 5 free ultrasounds for abortion-minded women. And our goal this week is to save 3,000 babies. We'll let you know on Monday how we are doing. 100% of your donation will go directly to the pregnancy centers providing the ultrasounds. Number to call to make a donation, 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or you can donate online at afr.net.
Yeah, Brian, we have actually gone over 3,100. And so that's just a real blessing. I really hope people will keep on donating, and we'll drive it on up even more.
Well, thank you for responding to the earlier appeals we've made this week. We've met our goal and exceeded it. Let's keep the ball rolling. So a $28 gift is 1 free ultrasound. $140 gift provides 5 free ultrasounds. Don't forget that 150,000 babies have been saved through preborn ministry. More than 49,000 women have surrendered their lives to Christ. $28 for 1 free ultrasound, $140 for 5. You can call at 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396 to make your donation, or you can donate online at afr.net, afr.net. All right, well, let's grab some sound bites. Here's Mark Levin, clip 1, talking about this insane and unconstitutional effort to impeach President Trump. And this is what he says about it, about the effort to, he's a sitting president. By the time they get around to actually doing the trial, conducting the trial, President Trump will be long gone. He'll be down in Mar-a-Lago playing golf. So this is what Mark Levin says about the folly, the insanity, the lunacy, the lack of soberness on the part of the Democrats to pursue an impeachment trial. Clip number 1.
And no, you cannot hold a trial against a private citizen or pursue a former president who's now a private citizen under the impeachment clause. That was never intended. So that is just absurd. But that's the idiocy and the insanity that's now taking place on Capitol Hill. High crimes and misdemeanors. This is their report, ladies and gentlemen. It's 76 pages, 26 pages of which are an appendix to news articles, to essays, to speeches by former colleagues. There's not one sliver of evidence of inciting an insurrection of any kind in this document. 50 pages, basically an op-ed. Historians are going to look at this and say, what kind of a moron wrote a document like this? Has anybody read it? No.
I love this guy. I love this guy for a lot of reasons. Partly I love him because he makes me sound like Fred Rogers. And also I like to play his sound bites because it lets Debbie know what I could sound like if I really got revved up. But anyway, if anybody talks to you about this impeachment trial of President Trump, just ask them, does the Constitution authorize impeachment trials for private citizens? That is the only question you need to ask, because the answer clearly is no. So impeachment is only there for sitting presidents. If you're not a president, does not apply to you. As of January 20th at noon, he will no longer be president. The statute of limitations will have run out. They can't use the impeachment clause against a private citizen, so we need just to tell them to go away. Now, the other side, I want you to be aware of this. The left is determined to label us by definition, if we're conservatives, if we support Donald Trump, they want to label us as domestic terrorists just for being conservative, just for liking Donald Trump, just for voting for Donald Trump. They want to make that proof positive that we are domestic terrorists. We don't need any more proof, the left says, that you're a threat to the peace and stability of this land than the fact that you like and supported Donald Trump. Here's Don Lemon talking with Chris Cuomo about this, clip number 2.
If you voted for Trump, you voted for the person who the Klan supported. You voted for the person who Nazis support.
All right, so listen to what the left is doing here. In the name of stopping fascism, we're the fascists. They want to stop us. So in the name of stopping fascism, they are shutting down our freedom of speech. They're shutting down our freedom of expression. They're shutting down our freedom of the press. They're shutting down our freedom of peaceable assembly. What is that? That is what fascists do. So they are indulging in fascism. They are committing fascism in the name of being opposed to it. It's just lunacy. Now, clip number 3, this is Matt Gaetz. You know, Donald Trump is being impeached because he incited a riot, even though he did nothing of the sort. There wasn't a word in his speech at that rally about storming the Capitol, about knocking down barricades, about destroying property. He urged them to go to the Capitol, but to go peacefully, make their voices heard peacefully and patriotically. Last thing that he said. But he's accused of inciting a riot. Even though the definition, the legal definition of inciting a riot doesn't match anywhere near what Donald Trump did, doesn't even come close. So here's Representative Matt Gaetz, and he's telling the truth here about what actually went on. Clip 3.
When the gentlelady from Massachusetts calls for unrest in the streets, when the gentlelady from California brazenly brags that she called for people to get in the faces of those who serve and support the president. I denounced political violence from all ends of the spectrum, but make no mistake, the left in America has incited far more political violence than the right. For months, our cities burned, police stations burned, our businesses were shattered, and they said nothing. Or they cheerled for it, and they fundraised for it, and they allowed it to happen in the greatest country in the world. Now, some have cited the metaphor that the president lit the flame. Well, they lit actual flames, actual fires.
Democrats obviously not too happy with that, but Matt Gaetz is exactly right. They have been inciting riots since March. They've been inciting riots since March. You know, months on end in places like Portland and Seattle, and they have the audacity to accuse Trump of inciting riots when he did absolutely no such thing. All right, now, clip number 4, here's President Trump defending himself, and listen to what MSNBC does. What MSNBC does just as soon as President Trump starts to explain and defend his actions. Clip 4.
So if you read my speech, and many people have done it, and I've seen it both in the papers and in the media, on television, it's been analyzed, and people thought that what I said was totally appropriate. And if you look at what other people have said, politicians at a high level, about the riots during the summer, the horrible riots in Portland and Seattle and various other places.
We are coming out of this now because the president has started to, as he occasionally does, often does, veer away from the truth.
Now notice, they cannot afford to let the American people hear him because he just might persuade them that he's not the buffoon, not the idiot, not the Hitler that they're trying to pretend that he is. Now, Joy Behar, here's a threat to conservatives like you and me. Clip number 5.
This country sacrificed American lives to fight fascism, and now we are fighting ourselves. We are fighting the fascists in this country. That, to me, is the insidious fascism that is growing day by day in this country. And it's people like Kevin McCarthy who need to be dealt with, even more than Jim Jordan.
Okay, they need to be dealt with. You know, that begs the question, what do you mean by dealt with? I know what it means when The Godfather says it. I know what it means when Marlon Brando says it. Exactly what do you mean by that, Joy Behar? You are not explaining yourself. So again, accusing Trump supporters of being fascists, and they're trying to fight fascism by being fascists, by shutting down our freedom of speech, by shutting down our ability to engage in business, like Twitter has done, completely destroying the company Parler. That's a company. Social media, yeah, but it's a company. There were people making a living off of that. That's all gone now. They have destroyed it in the name of fighting fascism. That's what's absurd about this. Now here's Jack Dorsey, clip number 6, talking about what Twitter has done, and it says, we have only begun to fight.
We are focused on one account right now, but this is going to be much bigger than just one account, and it's going to go on for much longer than just this day, this week, the next few weeks. It's going to go on beyond the inauguration.
Beyond the inauguration. Now, Twitter has come after me. I've been shadow banned for years. They've been siphoning followers off of my Twitter account. It went down about another 10% just over the last week as they're siphoning followers off of my Twitter account. And they've shut me down at various times. You know, I've been in Twitter prison, in the Twitter gulag at various times, just like I've been in the Facebook gulag for several days at a time, up to a week at a time. And Jack Dorsey says, we are just getting warmed up. If you have a Twitter feed and you say anything conservative, anything nice, about Donald Trump, we are going to come after you like Genghis Khan. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
American Family Radio newscasts are now available as a podcast.
Typically, those judges who are activists have distorted God's original creations of life, liberty, and the family. Legalized abortion and so-called same-sex marriage are just examples. There's more at wellversedworld.org.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Bryan Fischer.
Bryan Fischer.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point, the home of the fastest 60 minutes in American media. So buckle up, make sure your lap belt is fastened, your tray table in the upright and locked position. Want to welcome to our decision maker line Cliff Smith. He's the Washington Project Director for the Middle East Forum. Cliff, want to welcome you to Focal Point with Bryan Fischer.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
And what I want to talk with Cliff about is what the Middle East Forum has discovered about World Vision. Now, my wife and I are longtime supporters of World Vision. Back in the day, we stopped a number of years ago because World Vision decided to start taking money from the federal government. And we knew that's the death knell for an evangelical organization. You start taking money, you start dipping your nose in the trough of taxpayer funds, there's no place to stop. They had a great ministry at the time of providing resources for children that were in needy parts of the world, and we loved that, so we wanted to support these children. But Cliff, you have discovered something else. Your organization, Mideast Forum, discovered something else about World Vision that I think our listeners, as evangelicals, that need to know.
Yeah, I agree with you very much on that. And this has been a very heartbreaking investigation that has actually led to congressional action. So I, like you, had a good opinion of World Vision because, they tried to help children, and I hope they tried to preach a good message. when they were doing so. However, that said, we discovered 3 years ago now that World Vision had actually given a subgrant in the country of Sudan to a group called Islamic Relief Agency. Now, Islamic Relief Agency is not just any Muslim charity. It is a Muslim charity that was designated as a terror funding entity by the U.S. government in 2004 for giving money to, among other people, Hamas and some of Osama bin Laden's organization, and even to the point of helping Osama bin Laden escape capture at different times throughout its history. And so obviously these guys are just way beyond the pale. Now, we discovered this quite simply because this grant was put online, and they had subgranted money to Islamic Relief Agency, and frankly, nobody noticed. We put multiple FOIA requests in, that's Freedom of Information Act requests with the government to try to understand what happened. And basically, after several years of getting documents and writing about it, we realized what happened is World Vision had gotten involved in Sudan, and they were required to work with local partners by the Sudanese government, and for reasons that are hard to understand, they had wound up working with Islamic Relief Agency, and they simply didn't check, is what apparently is the case. They did not vet their partner, which was actually required, and they were paying them with taxpayer money, is the irony even further, is that they were paying them with a grant they had gotten from USAID. And they got called out for doing this when another international entity considered working with World Vision in Sudan, but pulled out when they realized that one of their partners in Sudan was a designated terrorist group. And then this got reported to USAID. It led to a giant fiasco in which they were trying to get permission from the government to pay Islamic Relief Agency again because they were worried about getting kicked out of the country. And that was actually granted by the Obama administration back in 2015 because they were afraid of their efforts of getting kicked out of Sudan. So it's a very unfortunate situation. We kept on it for years, and just recently the Senate Finance Committee issued a report basically saying that we were right about everything. World Vision did this, and what's more, they said it is true that they found no evidence they did it intentionally, but essentially it called them borderline negligence was the exact words they used, and said that their vetting procedures were inadequate and were basically led to this happening.
I'm looking here at an article from your own website, Middle East Forum, and World Vision had tried to kind of soft soap this thing. And then at one point, even though this organization, ISRA, this Islamic Relief Aid, had been on the terror watch list, the terrorist funding list, since 2004, more than a decade anyway, after it had been designated as a terrorist financing organization. So what you're telling me in short, Cliff, is that our taxpayer dollars went to World Vision through a government grant, and World Vision in turn sliced off a pretty big chunk of change to go to this terrorist financing organization. Do I have that right?
Sadly, that is entirely accurate, and that is actually the whole soft soaping thing you mentioned is actually something that is worth mentioning that I found very disheartening. Because when we first discovered this, we were hoping World Vision would essentially apologize, say, hey, we made a mistake, we'll fix it. Frankly, that probably would have been the end of it from our point of view. But they didn't. They continued to point fingers in other directions and try to claim that they did nothing wrong or that if they did, it was somebody else's fault. And they have done that to this day, sadly. The Senate Finance Committee's report, which, as I mentioned, was based on our work, and they dug even deeper, having access to more documents and individuals and such. One of the things it said was that one of the things that really concerned the Senate Finance Committee under the chairmanship of Chuck Grassley was that they had refused to take responsibility, and they continually tried to point fingers at somebody else. It's somebody else's fault, and not trying to take responsibility. Even after the Senate Finance Committee issued their report, their headline, pushback was, well, great, the Senate Finance Committee, says we didn't do anything intentionally. Well, I'm glad they didn't intentionally give money to terrorists, but it was very easy to check whether or not this group was on the list. And the proof of it was they got called out by a third party, another NGO, which were able to vet, ISRA and figure out they were a terrorist group really quickly. Within a matter of, they instantly spotted the problem, and in a matter of days had confirmed that they were a terrorist group. The World Vision wasn't able to do this in several years. So again, yeah, you're right. This is the real issue: is that they were borderline negligent, and then they didn't do. They basically tried to avoid responsibility, and I think that's just wrong all around.
Well, and World Vision told the federal government they were going to start working again with this Islamic Relief Agency, apparently wanting people to believe that they cleaned up their act or something like this. And this is what the USAID official, Daniel Holmberg, said. If they actually said that they wanted to resume work with ISRA, this Islamic Relief Agency, while knowing that it was 99% likely that ISRA was on the list, then I am concerned about our partnership with them and whether it should continue. And I think Go ahead, Cliff. Finish your thought.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And it's really, and this is, I will say something that I cannot prove, although I suspect. At the time, this was before the revolution in Sudan. That was before the Omar al-Bashir radical Islamic government in Sudan fell. And at the time, it was a state sponsor of terror. It was one of the most repressive regimes, one of the worst, dictators in the world. Sudan was run by back in 2014 when all this was happening, 2014, 2015. My guess is, and there's some evidence to back this up, although not prove unequivocally, but my guess is, they simply got in so deep with the Omar al-Bashir regime that, and so afraid of being kicked out that, anything he did, they would do. I mean, it's very clear based on the documents that ISRA was a de facto arm of the government.
So this is almost like protection money then for to keep the government of Sudan from shutting them down.
I think that's exactly right. Again, I can't prove that unequivocally, but there is documents to suggest that the government of Sudan was deeply involved in their relationship with ISRA. They had weekly checkups on the agreement being implemented, and Omar al-Bashir personally attended ISRA's board meeting. So that just shows you how deep this terror funding charity was with the dictator of Sudan at the time, Omar al-Bashir. Again, the only head of state ever brought up before the International Criminal Court on war crimes. I mean, really a bad guy, according to everybody.
My guest has been Cliff Smith of the Washington Project Director for Middle East Forum, blowing the whistle on World Vision, a noted pseudo-evangelical firm in the United States. Time for them to get their mind right and get their act right. All right, Cliff, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sunlight, the best disinfectant, and you've helped shed some light on a very troubling subject. Thank you for being with us, Cliff.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Bye.
You bet. Goodbye. All right. Got a few minutes left. Let's see if we can do some more damage to the left's interest here. All I got to do is find my rundown to be able to do that, and now I've got it in front of me. And Rob, you got your fingers nimbled up there? We got a couple
I am ready.
A couple of more sound bites. I mean, we'll take clear some out of the backlog, the inventory here. Again, talking about this comparison of us to the Klan. And ladies, understand that this is how the left sees us. They don't see us as the loyal opposition. They see us as Hitlers. They see us as members of the Klan. CNN people, their lead anchors in the evening, Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon, are saying that we are the Klan. If you voted for Trump, you're voting for the Klan. You support the Klan. And meanwhile, it was a Democrat, Robert Byrd, who used to be a recruiter for the Klan, an actual, honest-to-goodness recruiter for the Klan. And apparently the Democrats never had a problem with that. Now, Nancy Pelosi, you might have heard this. I would have talked about it last couple of days, but had no opportunity because of this windstorm. But Nancy Pelosi said, we're going to clean up our language in the House. We are not going to allow sexist terms to be used. We're going to clean up our gender language. She said, we are not going to allow people, this is Nancy Pelosi, not going to allow people to use the words father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, husband, wife, father-in-law, or mother-in-law. Can't even use the words niece and nephew because they have gender implications. So here is Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. This is just 2 days ago on the House floor, shredding her own standards, violating 6 of her own rules in 6 seconds. It's a marvel. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen, clip 7.
I stand before you as a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a daughter whose father proudly served in this Congress.
Okay, so she's blathering on.
Wow.
You can't use words like wife, mother, grandmother, daughter, or daughter whose father served in Congress unless you're me. And then I can say it all if I want, but you, the little people, the peons, the peasants, you cannot use these terms at all. Now go to clip number 8. This is Eugene Robinson. This is on MSNBC, mostly stuff that's nothing but counterfeit news. And again, he picks up on this Klan analogy in clip 8. Let's listen.
The Klan was lower income. The white citizens councils were the Josh Hawleys and Ted Cruz's of their day. So here's the situation, though. We have there are millions of Americans, almost all white, almost all Republicans, who somehow need to be deprogrammed. It's as if they are members of a cult, the Trumpist cult, and who have to be deprogrammed. Do you have any idea how we start that process, much less complete it?
You know where deprogramming takes place in much of the rest of the world? It takes place in re-education camps. That's where you get deprogrammed and turned into a good little citizen robot for the state. And this is what Eugene Robinson is talking about here. He's saying Ted Cruz, he's nothing but an upper crust elitist Klansman. Now let's go to clip number 9. Here's Nancy Pelosi talking to Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes. And Leslie Stahl actually challenges her on something, and Queen Nancy did not like it at all. Clip 9.
What about the COVID relief package? Yeah. That was held up for 8 months.
No, but that was their obstruction. I understand this.
Well, wait.
Was their obstruction?
Yours too.
Their obstruction.
No, yours too. Takes
no, it
two
wasn't
to-
obstruction.
You held out for 8 months.
No.
So apparently Nancy Pelosi believes if you tell a lie often enough, it magically becomes true. All you have to do, whether there's any basis for it or not, is simply mindlessly repeat it was their obstruction, their obstruction, their obstruction, and somehow Leslie Stahl will be blown away by the power of your logic and agree with you. All right, Kamala Harris, clip number 10, last clip. Let's hit it.
When you think of Vogue magazine, you think high fashion, top-notch styling, and luxury designer. So many were shocked to see the cover with the VP-elect, with the general consensus being that the magazine just missed the mark. The cover's unplanned early release immediately drawing criticism for not measuring up to what's expected from the leading fashion magazine. One person writing, they really put Kamala Harris VP in Converse for Vogue, slamming the photo for looking like an amateur snapshot.
Vogue is getting some backlash for its cover photo of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris in next month's issue. Critics call this picture of Harris wearing her familiar Converse sneakers unflattering, disrespectful, and some even called it a little racist.
Vogue magazine, a little racist because Kamala Harris wore Converse tennis shoes to a photo shoot, and they took a picture of you. That's what you do, Kamala, at a photo shoot. You take pictures. That's it for this week. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap, and never forget we're fighting a winnable war. See you Monday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily